Welcome to Node Mode. I'm Depeche Node, here with my stunning co-host and producer of the show, mi padre Pio. And you are listening to the NFT podcast focused on digital art. We talk with artists, OG collectors, and the smartest people in the space about all things NFTs. We are, in fact, in it for the art. As always, nothing in this video is financial advice. We are not financial advisors. And the NFT space is incredibly risky, so make sure to always do your own research. If you enjoy the content, hit that like button, smash the subscribe button, and share the video with your friends. And don't forget to check out our NFT, the Nifty Portal, to get access to the community and come along for the ride. Our guest today is VGF, also known as Video Game Freak. VGF is an OG in the space and a wealth of knowledge. I consider VGF to be the grandfather of NFT Discord communities, and he's also an avid collector of digital art. He's currently working at Pixel Vault, so excited to learn more about the day-to-day there. VGF, welcome to the show.
Appreciate y'all. First time on the Node show, but definitely familiar with Pio and their other shows, so glad to be back.
Can I tell a little anecdote, Node, before we dive into chatting with VGF? So last year, 2021, there was an event that was a major catalyst for me in the NFT space. What that event was on a holiday. It might have been like Memorial Day or 4th of July or one of the Columbus Day or something like that. I didn't have to work. And I rolled out of bed at like 9:30 or 10 and I was making coffee and I just took out my phone and Gary Vaynerchuk started a Twitter space. And I just, without hesitation, I joined it. And without hesitation, I requested to speak. I was literally just by happenstance, like one of the first people in the room, and Gary immediately lets me on stage. I've been making content for 4 months maybe or something, so I was experienced with interviews and stuff like that, and me and Gary just started talking. It was just me and him for a while, and maybe 7 minutes of just me and Gary, and I got like a ton of followers from it. The next person that Gary talked to was VGF on the show, and then everyone that talked on the show, I DM'd and I said, yo, you were just on the show too. Cool. A lot of people didn't get back to me. VGF is one of the people that did get back to me. And then he came on my podcast at the time more than once, very generous with his time. But most importantly, at the time, VGF had the Pixel Vault weekly town hall, which was the biggest Twitter space in the NFT space. There was nothing bigger than that. And it was every week. And VGF would let people on the show that wouldn't normally be able to get on big stages like that. And I'm pretty sure every time I ever requested, VGF would let me on stage. Maybe I had to wait 5 minutes, but I would get on the stage. Anytime he was like, we're going to rotate speakers, I ran off the stage faster than anything. I was like, I'm not going to let this guy kick me off. I'm out of here. But I'll never forget that because I got so much momentum from that kind of sequence of events. And specifically because VGF was very generous with letting me on that stage consistently. So I'll always appreciate that, man. Seriously.
Thank you. I'm glad that it played a small part, but I've been, keeping an eye on what you guys have been doing. You kept the ball rolling. That's for sure. Like the content has not stopped. So
people want you to grow a mustache. Yeah,
it's just like a hilarious comment.
It's just the next thing.
I'm not on brand with the other with the co-hosts. So
don't worry, NFT Nick. We're still pressuring him to get a mustache, but I don't know that he's capable of growing one. And to be fair, I wasn't until this year. So it's
mine is spotty at best. So yeah. Like it's I need some work on that one.
That's awesome, man. Well, dude, I want to look at that. Oh, yes. Okay, let's talk about this because I forgot about this. Okay, let's start with the baby punks. Tell us about this thing because you launched these, right?
No. So I was not a member of the team.
I thought, yeah.
Yeah, no, I was simply a community member, but it was one of my first forays into working in the space. So it was a project that I was like passionate about early on. It was kind of like one of the early CryptoPunk derivatives. And like initially it was like very bare bones Discord, and VGF stands for Video Game Freak. Like I came from gaming, had a lot of experience managing communities, building out Discords. And very early on, I saw that as kind of like my avenue to immediately add value. Like people didn't know how to incorporate Web3 into Discord and like how to be semi sort of secure, or like managing of roles and permissions were really, really foreign at the time. So yeah, that was really like my first value add to the space was, hey, like you're doing something cool. How can I help? Like, let me build out a Discord for you. And like that community really like launched a lot of people that like are big names today. I know that there's like Bernardo and a bunch of those guys that like from the Schiller team that came out of that Discord. Like Richard was in there really early on. A bunch of big collectors and artists were a part of that like early crew. I know that there's been quite a bit of rotation from those early collectors, but it was kind of like a snapshot of a time and place. It was pretty cool.
That's awesome, man. So you've managed Discords, I feel like, for some of the top people in the space. Like, weren't you in Xcopy's Discord as a mod? Like, I feel like you're a mod in a dozen of like the top Discords. That's what it felt like last year. And then I've fallen off.
Right?
I've fallen off the Discord bandwagon lately. But like, tell us some of your experiences like managing Discords for like legit artists and top people in the space.
Well, so I was not for Xcopy. I can't take that credit, but yeah, I mean some pretty big ones early on. Justin Aversano's Twin Flames. I'm a huge fan of Justin. One of my larger regrets at the time was that I was his Discord admin from when Twin Flames were like an ETH. And I quite simply did not have the money. So like I joined the space in like February, March of last year, really got active in like April. And like I basically got in for what was like an ETH at the time. And it was basically all I could put together to still maintain paying my bills. I would not recommend anyone like do what I did in like trying to work in Web3. Like I basically quit anything and everything else I was doing and gave myself like a 4-month runway of like needing to make something happen, and spent 16 to 18 hours a day for 6 months playing catch up / get ahead. And it created some fantastic avenues and kind of on ramps for me. Some great connections from like that time that are still good friends, and even coming back to how I met PO and keep coming back to the show. But yeah, like some of those early Discords. I mean, at one point I think I was admin of like 20 some odd Discords, and basically lived on Discord 24 hours a day. But I spent a good couple months kind of differentiating, admin and moderator duties. And that kind of became my process. Was like, hey, I'll admin, I'll be, the advisor, the consultant, and help scale out the internal moderation team and that kind of thing. But I put a pretty clear differentiation between like an administrator role and your day-to-day moderator roles, because an admin in that capacity just cannot be that same person, unless they're like the single person that is filling both kind of capacities. But yeah, Justin's Twin Flames was definitely a highlight. Met a lot of phenomenal like collectors and people in the space. So
how much time would you say you worked for free in this space?
A lot. I mean, a lot.
Damn right.
Yeah. I mean, I worked with you for free. I was working for free for a long period of time with VGF. You know what I mean? And this guy, I'm not going to talk too much about the broader team that we were working with, but he was you were on top of it. You know what I mean? And to know that you were on top of it whilst being on top of about 10 other Discords was impressive, man. So just so much kudos to you.
Thank you. But yeah, I mean, like And not that everyone needs to approach it the same way. Like I was coming in from, that was my realm of quote unquote expertise at the time. I knew everything about Discord, but I was playing catch up on NFTs and crypto. Like I'd kind of observed from afar for a number of years, but I'd never really gotten involved. And with NFTs, particularly in relation to gaming and art, that was where I like it clicked, and I was all in, like almost overnight. Like when that resonated, I was like, it's game on. And I took a few weeks to kind of get my affairs in order, and like left behind my gig at the time, and pretty much was Web3, even the like full-time Web3, before I was being paid to be in Web3. So it was adventurous and probably a little bold for me to make that leap at the time, but it paid off.
When I met VGF, I remember distinctly thinking this guy is like really like working in the space, like actually, and I remember like viewing VGF as like the example of someone that had properly gone all in. And I remember when you announced that you went full-time with Pixel Vault, and it was like, a full-time job, you were the first guy that I knew to be working in Web3 full time that wasn't like a crypto OG that was essentially an entrepreneur in the space already, right? You were the first person that I knew that was like doing full-time work. And I knew that you had done like a ton of, as long as I've known VGF, I've known that he's active as hell, like Node said that. So I used VGF as an example. I was like, I remember telling in real life friends, this guy VGF just got a job at this Web3, like this NFT business called Pixel Vault, and me just being so like blown away by it at the time.
Well, I think that's where people are mistaken, because like when I went back and joined Pixel Vault full time, and kind of like recommitted with them, a lot of people were like, "Hey, you're not on Discord, or like you're not around Twitter Spaces or like Clubhouse as much. Like, what's going on?" And it's like, well, yeah, I have a job, like,
I'm working on something. Yeah,
and for a long time, I was putting a lot of time, effort, energy into giving back and doing a lot of educational and onboarding via Twitter Spaces, Clubhouse. But I was mindful that I was like, even while I was spending a lot of time doing those things, I was very intentional with that time. There's a lot of people that you see, particularly on Spaces these days, that are just like, building, right, but like they're just spending all day on Twitter. Yeah. And if they're not, like, there are some people that I can see are doing that with intention in mind. They're building their personal brand or building it towards, a project's brand or what have you. More power to them, like they're doing it with intention. I say that to say that, like, there are a lot of people that spend all day, every day on Twitter, Discord, et cetera, and are not being productive with that time. And I make that very clear distinction, because like there is a way to do this productively and to like leverage that to build connections, relationships, like a bunch of people are like taking time off during the bear. And I'm like, if anything, I'm using that time to like reconnect with a bunch of people that were either too busy or that I was too busy to like really spend some quality time with during the bull when everyone's going crazy. And now we're like setting up times to, have another call or like reconnect or what have you. And like that's like the intangibles. Like it may not directly impact your like ETH balance right now, but these are the people that are going to come back, or that like if they stick around might launch that project in the future. So to me, it's just being like intentional and like mindful with what you're doing with your time.
I couldn't agree.
Now's a good time to connect with people, right? Like now's a great time. You can get a hold of people. It's a good time. So if you're out trying to build, definitely now is a great time. Sorry, Pio, I cut you off.
I was just going to say the real people are here right now. And so there's just fewer people here now than in the bear. So there's like less of a distraction. And what VGF said about like the people that are on Twitter with intention, like I look at, I'll use Shillin Villain as an example. He's on Twitter with intention. He tweets like literally 300 times a day and hosts 2 Twitter spaces a day, 90 minutes a pop. That's because that's what he's doing. He's focused on the singular thing of Twitter and developing on Twitter. He's going that route. He doesn't then have a startup business that he's neglecting because he's spending so much time on social media, right? Because there's a lot of people that have like legit startup businesses and you're like, should you be on Twitter as much as you are? I kind of think you're just addicted to social media, amigo, you know, like, so yeah.
Yeah, so I want to, while we're on the subject of Pixel Vault here, I want to get a little insight into your day-to-day VGF. You know, I don't really know, like, what's it like working in Web3 on the inside with one of these companies? And I'll say, you know, that's question number 1. And question number 2 is, how is it trying to deal with people's expectations?
So a couple parts to that. One, I think with any traditional startup, especially in Web3, like with how quickly everything moves, a lot of people wear a lot of hats. And so, you know, whether it's strategy calls, branding and marketing calls, social media, you know, there's so many conversations to be had and like try and be mindful of that it really is a team effort. And particularly like in relation to Pixel Vault, there's a lot going on behind the scenes that like the community doesn't yet have like the full insight towards. So one of the challenges is like, though a lot of it may not yet be publicly facing, it doesn't mean we're not busy or not working. And so one of the challenges is like, you know, the when, and wanting to set, you know, realistic expectations or be able to communicate, you know, timelines, but also to have some surprise and delight when those announcements, you know, when those deliverables do come to fruition. So like one of the things with NFTs is like, and we've seen this in the market is, you know, buy the rumor, sell the news. If they know the rumor's coming and the news is not exciting, like it's what then, like you can't just have this, you know, hype cycle of like build up anticipation and hype and then crash. And like for us, we've kind of leaned in towards, you know, let's now build out this product roadmap so that it's now boom, 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 deliverable after deliverable, and build more of that slow, sustainable growth rather than anticipation and hype and the inevitable crash afterwards. So it is a challenge, and you know, we're not going to say that we're going to be perfect about it every time, but particularly excited about what we've got coming, you know, basically this next month, you know, through the end of the year especially.
Nice. Yeah, I feel like, you know, between Pixel Vault and projects like Cool Cats, right? Like once you've been around long enough, right, that you have to be delivering at this stage. The hype cycles don't work after the first 3 months or 6 months of a project. And the reality is most projects are, you know, a lot of the big projects have launched within the last 9 months, right? Or the last 9 to 12 months. And Pixel Vault is one of the few that is like over a year old, right? So really cool that it's, you know, you're still alive, number one, and that you raised money, like you're doing big boy stuff. And it's hard to please everyone, but definitely commend you for all the effort you're putting in for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's definitely kind of and I think Pixel Vault was one of the earlier projects to kind of feel this pain of, you know, we did have a lot of early hype and, you know, some pretty ridiculous valuations, you know, early on. And with that drawback, you know, we've seen it more recently with Cool Cats, with, you know, some fairly, you know, sizable other side is feeling, you know, I feel similar pains, where people, you know, speculated and bought in at, you know, some pretty high valuations. And with that drawback, the expectations haven't necessarily been met, and that the sustainability of that is difficult to manage. And so it is kind of a balancing act that I think are not only growing pains of like these individual projects, but for the space as a whole, that some of this like market speculation blows back against the company or companies, that people's expected anticipation of future expected value doesn't necessarily line up with reality, and then it reacts like with negative sentiment against the project, even though they or we are trying our best to fulfill and deliver on our roadmap and expectations, promises.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to transition a little bit and talk about you mentioned in the beginning that art really clicked for you, and we like to focus on the art side for sure here. You are a big, I feel like you're a big Tezos guy.
Yeah.
Tell us about
more so than ETH lately, actually.
Okay, yeah. Tell us more about Tezos. And if you have a second, do you have a link to your collection you can throw in the chat here? We want to do some browsing. I looked it up. The old Hicket Nunk link is dead, as you might imagine. Gotcha. So sweet, there it is. So yeah, people can pull that one up. But I'd love to get your take broader. Let's start broad with Tezos in general. Mm-hmm. And then want to learn about some of the artists that you really like there.
So initially, and I think this is sort of a realistic or more sustainable, healthier perspective to take when collecting NFTs, is I almost look at it through the lens of like, it's my quote unquote like gambling money. Like, I don't go to the casino, but like when I did, it's like, if I have enough fun to justify the expense and I have something pretty that I appreciate it, like to show for the end, like at the end of it, even if it were all to go to zero, which I don't think it will, I'm okay with that. Like, I'm supporting an artist. I love what I'm buying. Like, that's kind of a win-win-win all the way around. And then if it like appreciates in value to where I'm able to take profit off of it, like even better. So with that, I basically anything I buy is with the expectation it's going to go to zero, like that it's just going to be a pretty picture and like a token on, to show that I was here at a moment in time, whatever. But like for me, this is really the first time in my life I've able to be a collector of art. Like, I've been a collector of a lot of other things in my life, like sports cards, Pokemon, kind of memorabilia-esque type things. But I've never really had the opportunity to be like a fine art collector or anything like that. So this is really the first time in my life I've been able to dedicate any part of my like income or like just put money towards like art and supporting like individual creators. And my thinking there is like, if I am able to support a creator to keep doing what they're doing and keep putting more of their vision for creativity or beauty out into the world, like that is a worthy pursuit. Like, full stop, period. Like that is worth it to me. And that may not be the same for everybody. Like, for some, it may just be a vehicle to try and make money. More power to those people. It's not particularly for me. Almost everything that like, I rarely sell things. And when I do, it's usually to try and buy more art. But yeah, on Tezos, I've become definitely more of like generative art and programmatic art appreciator. Iskra Vilichkova is one of my personal favorites. Her it's ISKRA if you want to just search it.
Absolutely. That one I had pulled up right here by Krista Awad absolutely slaps. Can you imagine seeing like this on a really big digital display, like 16 by 16? Pretty crazy.
I'm wanting to project it even bigger, but yeah.
That is so cool.
So Iskra is actually who did there's 4 pieces that make up my cover photo on Twitter. They're 4 one-of-ones that I have from her. And like, just something about her work just really pops to me, where it's subtle, but it's complicated, it's nuanced, it like bold visual, like, the color palette really resonated with me. And so these pieces, the Generative Towards Sculpture series, was a series of 10 across a few months. This last year, I accumulated 4 out of the 10. I don't believe any of the rest are likely ever to go for sale. I know Art Gnome has another one. A couple other collectors have vaulted them. So, and to be honest, like, these are some of my favorite NFTs I own. Like, regardless of chain, regardless of anything, like, I put them as my banner for a reason. To me, they're just gorgeous.
They're banging.
Yeah, and so I'd seen Iskra had actually printed out, like, I don't know what they were, like 18 by 24s of them. But like, ideally, I would like to like really blow them up and do like fine art prints, because this is something that I would love to hang around the house.
So sick. VGF, I got the secret sauce when it comes to doing physicals. I can't spill it on stream, but I can give it to you off the cuff. But I got a gallery making reproductions for me on canvas with paint. I feel like
wow.
these because she can probably get you a really high res photo that they can, or JPEG or whatever image file that they can use to do it. And I feel like if you could feel the texture of the paint with these, that'd be incredible. But I mean, these are unbelievable, man. I think these are screaming for a really big 8-foot tall print or canvas,
I love these too.
That would be something else.
Yeah, it's like I almost imagine if they were printed off, it feels like it would have to be in 3D. Like, that's the way that it looks to me, like that it would be in 3D. Like, it would almost be like a slight sculpture on top of the paint. So that's super cool. Okay, so that's an artist you really like. Are they only on Tezos, or are they on ETH as well, or anywhere else?
I believe she's only on Tezos.
Cool.
I could be mistaken, but there are quite a few artists that have kind of played both sides. I believe she may only be on Tezos, or if she did do a drop on ETH, it was fairly limited.
Cool. Got it.
But yeah, like actually, I think it's still in my handle. The bird, we like the birds and the worms, the Bird and Worm Society. If you know, you know.
Nice. I don't know. I'm out of that loop, dude.
It started kind of as a so Art Gnome, Jason Bailey had kind of seeded it. It was basically a mashup of collectors of Iskra and a Japanese artist. I can never pronounce his name. Kabibi. But anyway, so there was a very small overlap of collectors of both of their works, affectionately referred to as the birds for Iskra and the worms for Kabibi. I apologize. I'm probably butchering that all over the place, but so the Bird and Worm Society came out of the collectors of, like, it was basically just kind of like this small niche group of like generative art appreciators. And it's kind of like grown from there. It's pretty cool.
I love that. So in terms of Tezos in general, like, where do you see things headed with that chain? Is the community growing? Is it getting stronger, or is the environmental
narrative
lessening of narrative for narrative?
To be honest,
like how's that all playing out?
To be honest, I am not the biggest fan of like Tezos as a chain, or as like the Tezos Foundation. I think their narrative of like #clean NFTs actually did a lot of harm to NFTs overall. that they were like, these are clean NFTs and the other ones are therefore dirty.
The sales pitch.
Yeah. And I see what they were doing. I just wasn't a big fan of it. The opposite side of that being that like the artists on Tezos are what took me there. And the artist community on Tezos is spectacular. And so like it typically has more of like an edition type culture to it. Like editions are much more broadly embraced in the Tezos scene than they typically seem to be on ETH. And it's typically like a lot more approachable in comparison to some of the valuations that we've seen on ETH. And there isn't so much of a flipping culture. Like if there is, it's for marginal, gains, and it's people trying to do those like mint it for a Tez, flip it for 3 kind of like quick flips and stuff, or it's very, very sizable gains after an artist has reached some, momentum. But a lot of people just accumulating because they appreciate and want to support independent artists. So to me, that was kind of like what brought me there, and what has kept me there is the approachability and the kind of like, again, that kind of casino metaphor of like, if I have enough fun and I can support these independent creators, that's enough, and like that's enough for me. And then if it happens to appreciate, even better.
Yeah, I love that. That's the way. And it's interesting too. I'm just like you in the way that I never collected art before NFTs, right? And then this has allowed me to kind of enter into that world for sure. That there have been some, pretty decent sized sales on Tezos though, right? Like it's not just all small amounts. There have been some big ones, right?
Oh yeah. No, especially on like FX Hash, which has been kind of like the art blocks for lack of better analogy, but it's like the art blocks for Tezos, generative art collections, garden monoliths.
Zancan, dude, I've been seeing this guy everywhere, and I don't own anything from this, and I want one so bad. Do you?
I have one or two of his like broader editions, but they very quickly escaped my price of acquisition. So, yeah, I mean, some of his pieces just been going absolutely crazy. I think he has this like interesting intersection of like having that broader appeal of like, this is nature and it's beautiful. It like has kind of like a broad general appeal. And then it has like such intricate nuance to like all of his series that for like the generative art appreciator, like they can get into like all of the nuance and detail of what makes him such a spectacular artist. And so it's like this elevation of like easily consumed and beautiful to look at, and technically very sound and like gorgeous. So I think that's kind of what set him apart from kind of hitting this like crossover where I feel like a lot of other people from ETH and other chains have seen him as kind of like this, like using the reference like as this monolith or kind of like a generative art namesake.
This is incredible art. If it's this is generative art.
This is generative art.
This is crazy. He's posting $30,000 plus sales on Tezos. So yeah, that's nuts for generative art. I mean, for this to be generative is incredible.
Mm-hmm. No, it's absolutely like beautiful one. And I think that the fact that it has like that nature element to it makes it very broadly desirable. like I think with a lot of generative or programmatic art, there is this kind of like a sense of abstract or where it's kind of a niche audience versus this. I think almost anyone can view it or consume it and find an appreciation for it that like it's almost like objectively beautiful. And I think that has given him kind of like put him up on this little bit of a pedestal. I do think some of his valuations have been kind of inflated by the ridiculous momentum that he's gotten, but I think that that's kind of like accumulation of how much, you know, success he has received for like the pattern of ridiculously high caliber work he's put out over the last, you know, however long, 2 years.
I just have so much regret. I've just been seeing images on Twitter for months and thinking, I need to go check it out. This looks pretty cool. I need to go check it out. And I never did. And just now I'm looking at the prices and realizing, yeah, I definitely missed the, you know, the discovery portion of this artist. And there's been, I'm pretty sure there's big names that have already collected him as well, right? He's kind of the cat's out of the bag, even though he may not be like really well known on ETH. I feel like there's a lot of people on ETH that do know who he is, and that some big time collectors that are picking up his work.
There was some like big time whales that like made the leap over explicitly to buy some of like this caliber work.
That's sick.
Look at this one. I mean, this I've heard the name a bunch of times, Zancan. This is the first time I've seen the work, and for this to be generative, bananas, completely bananas.
And so, yeah, I mean, there definitely is some of that like higher echelon. Like I think when you're talking about 30, you know, even $10,000+ works, it doesn't matter what chain they're on. Like that's a caliber, like a caliber, a tier above. Like that is out of the realm of possibility for most, you know, consumer audiences. That's when you're getting into like some pretty like savvy collecting.
And that's in a bear market.
Yeah. And so like he has become a little bit of a polarizing figure in the Tezos community. I don't think this is at fault of his own, but more so a reflection of like how the market has received him. But I think it really is just a testament to the caliber of his work, and that it is like objectively beautiful.
Interesting. What's the polarizing thing? Is it just that he's making so much money that people are mad about, or why is he polarizing?
Yeah, just that like he's become a little bit of this like that there is a little bit of this outside perception that he's this pillar of you know, Tezos, and this artist that can kind of be a referred to or looked at as this kind of mainstay, or like, you know, I'm trying to think of like the way that it
seems like it's like he's becoming mainstream, which is not like the Tezos way. You know what I mean? Like it's like that's such an indie vibe over there, and he's getting so big that that it's like people are looking at him and saying he's like this big time artist. Is that
or like more that? So individually, I think that it's like he has reached that because certain people have kind of like latched on to the movement, or like latched on to his momentum. And like there were a bunch of like ETH speculators or whales that just jumped in because they saw so much price action. And that like there are, quite frankly, there's a lot of otherwise spectacular artists that have not received that even in their own right have gotten a lot of success and a lot of momentum, that haven't gotten that kind of like ridiculous inflated valuations. Not that his work doesn't justify those prices. Like I think that it is spectacular, but it did kind of receive this pump.
Yeah.
That, you know, I mean, even when you look at the valuations in the trading volume, it's head and shoulders above everything else.
Welcome to the world of art, right? As I've learned more, reading that $12 million, $12 million stuffed shark book, it's like, wow, okay. The collectors and the auction houses and the art dealers matter 100%. They matter because they're the ones that can crown people. And it's hard to say because art is art. So, what is objectively better than something else? But at a certain level, somebody does need to just bless you, right? And then you become huge. And so I definitely can see the resentment there from some artists, because when I look at Tezos, there's so much talent over there. Mm-hmm. And it's hard because somebody asked me today in the Nifty Discord, they're like, "Hey, is this fine art?" And my only response was, "Is it expensive? If so, then yes." Like that's all I'm gonna say that's gonna define it or even pretend to. But I just feel like it's a tough thing that happens in the art world.
Well, and like I'm far from an art critic or like art historian. But one thing with like this tokenization and the kind of speculation on any and all of these assets is like what gives any of it any value is the consensus that it is of value. If enough people believe it to be of that kind of caliber, that valuation, then it is.
Yeah, and it's like Bitcoin. There you go. It's the same thing.
Really, I think of NFTs as like leverage on the underlying cryptocurrency. It like one utility and one use case is being able to attach a file or an image to this token to represent digital ownership. But like NFTs as like a technology, I think are really like leverage on the underlying cryptocurrency. So like my underlying thesis and investment thesis has been stack ETH and stack NFTs as leverage on and as stores of ETH or the other crypto, whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Pio, I noticed there was on the home screen there was William Mapon there, and are you familiar with him? VGF, William Mapon. He's the artist behind Anti-Cyclones. It's right there. It's dragons. Yeah, I want to look at this one because Anti-Cyclone. I almost bought one a few days ago for 6 ETH, and now the floor is almost 9 ETH, and so I'm just and everybody listening to guys on Proof and stuff, they really like William Mapon's work and they think he's an up and comer. And so I just noticed this as well. People have been chatting about dragons and I haven't even looked at it yet. This one's interesting, but I mean, I like Anti-Cyclone more, but I just thought, oh, this is it would be a cool collection to check out.
Well, and when you look at this is obviously appreciated quite a bit already, but when you look at pure like dollar valuations, this is somewhere in the ballpark of like $4,000 or $5,000 US dollars versus like 6-9 ETH, whatever, $15,000. Subjective appreciation of the art aside, there is a level of approachability that Tezos generally has that ETH may not yet. So like a lot of these artists that maybe have crazy collections or a lot of price action on ETH might still have some pretty approachable pieces available on Tezos.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Just it's almost like it's an automatic discount sometimes when you just hop over from one chain to the other. And I don't know, maybe there's a little bit of. Do you have this? I honestly do have this fear. A lot of people think it might be ridiculous, but after watching, this cycle and learning from previous cycles, what happens if Tezos does not? What happens if the chain stops functioning the way, or doesn't get the funding? What do you think happens if the chain?
That's a very real concern that is a risk factor.
Can't
for
you
sure.
just wrap the stuff though? Wouldn't it just end up wrapped somewhere else?
Potentially, I could see something like a vault system coming to, like I know that there is like emblem vault for,
Yeah, and that's
certain tokens to be wrapped on other chains, but
and that's counterparty. That's not, it was never as mainstream as Tezos is, right? So it's like if even counterparty can be wrapped, I figure I wouldn't.
There is Tezos wrapping systems, and I mean,
cool.
like I think that I know that there was like a John, like JJJJ on, that had a couple of pieces that were on Tezos that were wrapped and brought to Ethereum, but like in my opinion, if you're like, you need to have a respect for the risk of any of this space, that like any and all of it is risky. And in my, like, again, I'm coming from a place of, if all of this goes to zero, I'm fine. Yeah. So I have like some joy that I take in like the collecting and knowing I'm supporting these artists. And again, that's where like my perspective of where I'm coming from in buying these pieces. And like if all I have to show for it at the end of the day is like tokens with pretty pictures attached to it, I'm like, that's enough for me. If that is not the perspective that you're coming from, you can probably take, a few layers deeper of, if ETH goes to 5, or like if Tezos goes to 5 cents, it doesn't matter if your art appreciates 1,000%. You might still be out, a ridiculous number of dollars. So that should definitely be, taken into consideration.
Yeah, that's definitely something to think about and consider. I hadn't thought a whole lot about the Tezos price. Is it similar? Does it behave similarly to ETH? Like if Tezos is volatile, NFTs on Tez don't really, it's not great for the space, or if it's stable, does it give the market an opportunity to rise, or does all the art on Tezos still kind of revolve around or is impacted by what's happening on ETH?
I would say that the appreciation of like the token, it reacts very similarly. I forget what like the all-time high was, but it's similar in magnitude to like the volatility of ETH. I think it's sitting somewhere like $1.50, between like $1.50 and $2, something like that, currently. But again, to me, it's leverage on the underlying cryptocurrency, and so it should be taken with that grain of salt. Like if you're going to take gains, like you should have a management of your treasury or your portfolio of like off ramping enough to cover your tax liability and stuff like that. I know a handful of people that got caught in tax season of like leveraging everything that they had back into more NFTs, and come tax season, they have nothing in the bank to pay their tax bill. So it definitely is something to kind of like weigh into consideration. Like this was a realm that like I had no, like this is all coming from like mentors of mine that like had taught me well. Otherwise, like I may have been in a very similar boat. But thankfully, like I had much smarter people than I that whispered in my ear and said like, hey, when you take a big sale, you should probably put off ramp some of that and put it aside just in case.
Yeah, that is so wise. Like I am not in the position where if everything went to zero, I'd be okay. I'll tell you that. I'm definitely, as Nick likes to say, overexposed is the word, but happy to be overexposed. And the one thing I've been thinking more about in the bear market is at least I'm becoming more and more proud of what's in my wallet versus in the bull run. It's like there was so much garbage in there that was just there was nothing behind it, nothing that I wanted behind it other than a quick buck, right? And so it feels good to collect art that you really, really like. And that to me is like the most pure utility. Like it's just, you have it and it's there and it's yours.
If it brings you joy, that is utility. If it makes you feel something,
Yes.
That is utility. And like, I mean, as far as like the art goes, other than like my own selfish, like I want it, so I want to buy it. My kind of thesis with art is like, if I love and appreciate it, then chances are there are other people that will love and appreciate this, or like appreciate this artist's work. And if they keep putting out good work, chances are they'll continue to gain in popularity or exposure or whatever. And number may go up. May, emphasis may. But like I don't like, the selfish part of me is like I've never had exposure to being able to collect this volume of work before. So there is that kind of like childish part of me that is like, I want it, so I bought it.
100%. And I tweeted out something similar today where I was just, the more I think about art and the more, like, I don't know, I'm starting to feel like I'm only 36, but I'm starting to feel like this old man in the NFT space, because everybody's so young. And I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I've got like a family, I got 3 kids. I'm experiencing all these things in life. And the one thing about art that I really appreciate is a lot of art for me, as I'm getting older and maybe a little softer or something, I don't know, but like art captures the like a feeling, and you can apply like your own personal experiences, and the art might remind you of something, right? Or it might, or you might, when something happens in your life, like you might think about a piece of art differently, and it captures some kind of emotion or some kind of feeling that you have. And then you add to that there is scarcity and that they're non-fungible. So they are literally irreplaceable. And to me, that's where I find the thesis of art being so powerful, that's where people say, yeah, it becomes priceless, right? Like it's just such a, I don't know, there's something very special to art as you think more about it, than meets the eye, no pun intended, you know?
Well, and one of the big reasons that I think I gravitated towards like digitally native art, whether it's generative art, programmatic art, or artists, I think XCopy kind of like is the like face of some of like that digitally native like glitch art. Yep. Is that they really can't be collected via any other means. Like you could right click save them, sure, but like buying a print doesn't necessarily reflect the true nature of the work, whether it's like a visualization or a GIF or MP4 or the glitch pieces. It doesn't really like embody the totality of the piece. And so even though you might right click save it, or you might print it out, it's not like a true reflection of the body of the work. And to me, that like stands distinctly aside from fidgetals or traditionally painted that are then tokenized and that kind of work. Not that they don't also have a place here, but it is distinct in my mind because there really is no other way to collect that kind of work.
Yeah, it is the clearest use case and problem that has been solved, in my opinion, with NFTs, is owning a digital piece, like a digital art that there has been no way to truly own it previously. And that is a problem that was literally solved exactly by NFTs. So much other stuff, all these projects that come out, like there's a lot of things where you may or may not have to have an NFT. It's just kind of nice to have it. Whereas when it comes to pure play, digitally native, digital art, there's no other, like, this is the purest and truest way to actually own it. So,
well, that's where I think like NFTs are not only like a technology, but that's where it does kind of overlap into being a medium of art. Is that like there are some NFTs that are just tokenized for the technology, the digital provenance, ownership, etc. But then some of this digitally native art, there is no other way short of like commissioning an artist and having the only copy of it be on like your hard drive, that you could collect that kind of work. And that's where I think we've seen, Beeple, Nest Graphics, some of these otherwise you know, even in their previous lives, influential and successful artists that then come over into the NFT space and are able to be supported in an entirely different capacity.
I love that. Dude, we've had you on for almost an hour now. I really appreciate your time. This has been great. For those that aren't aware, check out VGF's Twitter profile. He's got a link there with so many good insights and reads. It makes me feel like I am so behind. But check out, like, he's got this list of articles that you should read if you want to get a strong foundation in crypto in general. Definitely check that out. VGF, any final words you'd like to leave with people that are just interested in kind of following your path, whether it's working in Web3 or collecting digital art?
Sure. So thank you for the shout out on the Notion, videogamefreak.com. It's a link to my Notion where I basically put a list of all, like, across all of last year, people were like, where do I start? Where do I go? What, like, in this whole decentralized economy, what are trusted resources of information? And so this is kind of like my curated list of articles and resources that have helped me in my journey. And that may be very different for somebody else, or may look very different from an artist's perspective. And so I would encourage you, if my list is of value to you, curate your own lists. Like, have that resource that you can point to, that you can refer other people. Like, my list may not be the most valuable to everyone else. I know that for non-technical people, it may read somewhat dry in some, like, I break it all down. There's, you know, everywhere from Twitter threads to academic journals. Like, not everything is for everybody, but there should be a little something for anybody. And so definitely check it out. Open to constructive criticism. It's definitely kind of part of a process and not finished by any means. Haven't updated it in a couple of months, and I know I'm long overdue for another one, and I think I'm going to change up the style a little bit. But yeah, Twitter, VGFreakXBL. I'm kind of on any socials under that handle. And I will have to update my Tezos collection link. But other than that, open to chatting. DMs are open. I might take a bit to get back to message requests, but I do try to get back to them when I can. So always open to chatting.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for joining the show. Thank you, everyone. All the comments. Everybody loves you, VGF, if you haven't noticed. So thanks, everyone, for joining, and we will see you next week.
Catch you guys next time.